My talk is basically based on antegrade dissection, reentry, wire-based. So first, let us examine which are the situations in which wire-based area may be considered. So it may be considered a bailout strategy. Most of the time, we use it as a bailout strategy, especially wire-based, after unplanned entry into the sublimate space. And when do you plan a dissection reentry, especially wire-based? And some of the subsets like absence of intervention collaterals, when you have a good distal target vessel, when you don't have much of side branches, either from the CTO or just after the CTO or along the course of the vessel, especially this is done in a right coronary artery. And with stump is ambiguous, one can plan an entry like this, and especially long, tortuous, calcitic occlusions. Now let us examine what is the basic principle behind the re-entry. The basic principle, this is a cross-section of the artery for the stain specific for the elastic fibers. You can see here, this is the tunica externa or the external elastic lamina. This is the stain for elastic fibers. And this is the layer which protects all our activities. Especially this is a basic thing to know when one is attempting a subintimal dissection. The basic thing is not to leave the vessel architecture, not to leave this layer. So this layer is very, very important, and a peculiar characteristic of this layer, tunica externa or external elastic lamina, is that you can stretch it. This is like a rubber tube, like a Foley's catheter, you can imagine. You can stretch it, but not this. You need to go out of this, you need to perforate it with a pinpoint. So basically, when you do an antegrade dissection reentry, you have a knuckle wear, which usually is not like this. So, not to do this, enter the subintimal. Subintimal means is basically the layer just in a CTO. All these layers will not be there because the plaque actually takes out all the layers, and it is just one thing. Whatever is behind or below the external elastic lamina. So it is basically to go through that layer. So entry into the subintimal. When you try to enter into the subintimal space, it's often very difficult. So which are the techniques available? Either the scratch and go or a base technique or a balloon assisted subintimal entry. This is especially useful when you have some disease proximally. When you go with a balloon, which is almost 1-to-1, semi-compliant balloon, 1-to-1 size or a little upsize. Preferred inflation pressures are around 10 to 15 atmospheres, not more than that. Make a dissection here or somewhere, and then you put a wire through that dissection and enter the subintimal. So it's sometimes a frustrating experience, especially you do it for an antegrade when you try to enter the subintimal intentionally. Now this is scratch and go. Another technique for a subintimal entry. You use a wire like a Confiance Pro or a Gaia third, and just scratch here or make some intimal pair, and then use another wire like a Fielder XT or a pilot series of wires and just slowly push it in. This is a scratch and go technique. Now this is the most important part of the technique. Knuckle formation and its management and adjustment. Basically when you start, for the wires which are used for knuckling are basically either Fielder XT or a Pilot 50 or a 200. These are the wires, polymeric wires. When you start pushing gently, you start to develop a loop like this. Otherwise, you can make a small J loop. Then this is the ideal loop in which actually this has to be pushed down. When you push more, or when you have a wire like a Pilot 200, you get a bigger knuckle. The basic thing is not to torque the wire, just to push it. The technique is to intermittent fast forward pushes, as you do in peripheral angioplasties. Intermittent fast forward pushes, just to dissect to the medial smooth muscle layer, if possible. Now when you get something like this here, and then when you see that the wire is getting knuckled, it is always better to get the wire back into the microcatheter and take out that multiple loops forming here. Sometimes this can get entangled, and it may be very difficult to get out of the CTO body or through into the microcatheter. Now which are the methods for re-entry? Star method, we know subintimal tracking and re-entry, which is described by Antonio Colombo almost more than 10 years now. Now the modifications described by Dr. Galassi. This is mini star, and last described by Dr. Lombardi. Now basically star technique uses pushes the loop down and makes a long dissection plane, and reentry is often unintentional and often occurs at a side branch level. Multiple branches may be lost in a star technique. So conversion to other reentry methods also it is less feasible because a large subepineal hematoma which can form, and long subepineal stenting may be required in a star technique, and reocclusion rates are also very high. So this may be used as an investment procedure, especially when you don't have much of a flow after the procedure. You may just leave it. No, don't stent it. Take the patient after some 2-3 months after everything is healed, and sometimes you may be able to stent it. This is one thing actually which can be done when you are landed up, when you have landed up with a star technique. Now, mini star and LAST, the basic principle is to limit the dissection to the maximum possible extent, and just to try to enter the lumen just after the body of the CTO. Mini star basically uses fielder exterior wires like the sort of wires and a softer gentle curves and a small knuckles which are just pushed and not very aggressively, and just try to enter the distal lumen. In a limited antegrade subepineal tracting or track, almost a 90-degree or near 90-degree angle is made with a confiance pro, and one tries to puncture into the lumen of the vessel just after the CTO body. But these are all well said rather than actually, well described rather than actually done, because it's when you try to do it, especially what happens is large subepineal hematoma forms, and usually it is a failure to re-enter. And in the present era, use of string resistance may be used. So this is a major problem. Distal lumen compression by a subepineal hematoma. One technique which one can use is to just aspirate the hematoma from here. Now, one has to be very careful not to produce a perforation, especially like this, but usually uncommon. The re-entry point going far too distal than expected. This is obviously this mini star becoming a star. These 2 points, high rates of side branch occlusion, high reocclusion rates are always a problem. Now, if you get this was a case in which an ambiguous stem, a scratching out technique was used, and a loop like this was formed. Now, this loop could have been pushed down and for an subepineal tracking and re-entry, but always the preferable method is to just have a subepineal space like this inside the body of the CTO. Because if you go outside the body, usually hematoma occurs and it is uncontrolled. And so if there is an option for a reverse cut, it's always better to do a reverse cut like this. Now, my question is, what is the role of wire-based re-entry in the present era of Gaia and now Gaia Next? Now, these wires are extremely torqueable, extremely controllable, even in the distal part of the CTO. Now you can see this wire is actually out here, short CTO of LED, but distal landing zone is narrow. You all might have noticed that you can almost always easily, most of the time nowadays, pull back the wire and redirect it into the lumen like this. And this is even getting more feasible with longer wires like newer wires like Gaia Next. So to summarize, wire-based ADR may be used as a bailout strategy and is the least preferred approach in a CTO, especially Antegrade, due to its unpredictability. You don't know where you enter. And other methods like a parallel wire or wire redirection, as I have just shown, or reverse cut whenever feasible, is more preferable, especially to reduce the subepineal length of the stenting. And device-based ADR is preferred to an Antegrade wire-based re-entry. Thank you.